Hello. I thought I was happily married, until I discovered my wife was sneaking off to appointments with her dentist. But when I uncovered the truth, I didn't just confront them, I destroyed their lives, one piece of evidence at a time. My name's Daniel, and I'm 35. My wife, Sarah, is 33, and we've been married for 7 years. It wasn't one of those whirlwind romances. They don't tell you about the quiet, slow burn kind that catches you off guard. We met at a mutual friend's party, and I remember thinking, wow, who's the woman making everyone laugh over there? I didn't realize then that she would become my whole world. Sarah's got this kind of effortless charisma, you know. She can charm anyone without even trying. Friends always joked that she could sell ice to an Eskimo, and honestly, it wasn't far from the truth. I loved that about her. It was like she could make every moment feel brighter just by being in it. Our marriage was good, great, even. We traveled, we made plans, and we talked about starting a family soon. From the outside, we were the perfect couple, and for a long time, I believed it too. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that reality doesn't always match the picture you've painted in your head. Looking back, maybe I should have seen the signs earlier. Not the typical, she's always on her phone, stuff, but subtle things. Like how she started humming to herself while getting dressed, a habit she never had before. Little melodies, ones I couldn't recognize. She'd twirl in front of the mirror, applying a bit more makeup than usual, even when she was just going to run errands. I'd ask where she was headed, and she'd say something vague, like, oh, just out, you know. I'll be back soon. It felt off, but I chalked it up to her enjoying a bit of me time. We all need that, right? Then there was this one night, our anniversary, actually. We had dinner plans, and she insisted on handling the reservations. When we got to the restaurant, there was this weird moment where the hostess handed her a note, and she quickly crumpled it up, slipping it into her purse with a laugh. Oh, it's nothing, she said when I asked. I didn't think much of it then, but now, it's one of those details I can't stop replaying. Sarah was always a private person, but lately, her secrecy had an edge to it, like she was performing. She'd make sure to tell me about her day, every mundane detail, but the stories felt rehearsed, like she was reading from a script she'd practiced. Oh, you know, I grabbed lunch with Jen, she's thinking of switching jobs, and then I had to run to the store to pick up some stuff, she'd say, smiling that perfect smile. And maybe I'd believe her, but why did she still smell like perfume when she came home at 10 p.m.? I wish I could say I trusted her fully. I wish I could say I was just imagining things. But there's a difference between paranoia and instinct, and my gut was screaming at me. Still, I didn't want to look like the jealous, controlling husband who sees red flags where there are none. So, I kept pushing those doubts away, telling myself I was just overthinking it. And then, there was the dentist. Yes, you heard that right, the guy who cleans teeth for a living. That's where this whole story starts to twist in ways I couldn't have predicted, even if I tried. Okay, so Sarah has this thing about her teeth. Always has. She brushes like 5 times a day, flosses religiously, the whole deal. It was something I found kind of adorable, to be honest. She'd complain if she even thought she felt a speck of plaque. So, she's always been regular with her dentist appointments, but about 6 months ago, she switched to a new guy, Dr. Andrew Winters. Apparently, he was recommended by a friend. Now, let me set this up, her old dentist was fine. No issues. Clean teeth, no cavities, end of story. But she suddenly started raving about this new one. Andrew is amazing, he really knows what he's doing, she'd say. He's got these new techniques, and he's so thorough. The first time I heard it, I thought, okay, cool, she found someone she likes. But then she'd drop his name into conversations that had nothing to do with teeth. Oh, Andrew suggested this new toothpaste. It's supposed to be great for sensitivity. Or, Andrew thinks I should come in for a follow-up next week, just to make sure everything's perfect. It got to the point where I jokingly called him Dr. Perfect one night, and she laughed, but there was this flicker in her eyes. Like I'd hit a nerve I didn't realize was there. "He's just really good at his job," she said, almost defensively. And I brushed it off, but that was the moment the seed of doubt was planted. Then there was this one night, she comes home late, like, past 11 p.m. I'd been trying to reach her for hours, and she hadn't picked up. When she finally walked through the door, she had this weird, almost smug smile on her face. "Sorry I'm late," she said. "Andrew squeezed me in last minute because I had a tooth bothering me. You know how I get about that stuff." She said it so casually, like it was no big deal, but who sees their dentist at 10 p.m.? I didn't say anything at the time, but I remember lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, feeling this cold, creeping dread settle over me. Something was going on, but I didn't have the faintest clue what. Yet. So, there I am, parked down the street, telling myself to be rational, to not jump to conclusions. But there's this little voice in my head that's telling me, go find out for yourself. That voice keeps getting louder until it drowns out everything else. Before I know it, I'm out of the car, walking toward the building, trying to ignore the fact that my hands are shaking. I creep around to the side of the building, and I spot a window near the back. I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I have to see what's going on. I can't just sit there, imagining the worst. I need to know the truth. I peer inside, and that's when I see them. Sarah is standing there, leaning against the counter, and she's laughing, really laughing, like I haven't seen her do in months. I can't hear a word, but I don't need to. She looks like she's having the time of her life. Then Dr. Andrew steps closer, way too close for comfort, and he leans in. At first, it's just a whisper, but then he kisses her. I don't even think. I'm not rational. I'm not calm. My mind goes blank, and before I know it, I'm charging through the side door, not caring who sees me. The door slams against the wall as I burst into the room, and they jump apart, startled. What the hell is this? I shout, my voice echoing off the sterile white walls. Is this how he cleans your teeth, Sarah? Sarah's eyes widen, and for a second, she looks like a deer caught in headlights. She opens her mouth to speak, but nothing comes out. Dr. Andrew just stands there, looking stunned, like he's trying to figure out if he should run or try to explain. But I'm not giving him a chance. Without even thinking, I lunge forward and shove him back against the counter. You think this is funny? I yell, my voice cracking. You think you can just mess around with someone else's wife and get away with it? Hey, man, calm down. Andrew stammers, trying to keep his hands up defensively. It's not what it looks like. I cut him off with a sharp shove to the chest. Not what it looks like. I laugh, and it sounds almost maniacal, even to me. I'm standing right here. I can see what's happening, and you're telling me it's not what it looks like. Sarah finally snaps out of her shock and steps between us, trying to push me back. Daniel, please, stop. You're overreacting, she pleads, her voice trembling. Overreacting? I say, my chest heaving. Overreacting to seeing my wife making out with her dentist? What kind of fool do you think I am? I can barely control the rage that's surging through me. Is this how he accommodates you, Sarah? By meeting you here, late at night, for a little checkup? She flinches at my words, and I can see her eyes welling up. But I don't care. I've never been this angry in my entire life. How long has this been going on? I demand, glaring at both of them. Was it just a fling, or is there more you haven't told me? Sarah looks at the floor, her lips trembling, and I can feel my heart breaking even as I stand there, fists clenched. Daniel, please, let me explain, she says, but her voice is so soft, I almost don't hear her. No, I don't want to hear your excuses, I snap, stepping back. I want to know the truth. Are you in love with him, or is he just your little plaything on the side? Andrew tries to speak up, but I cut him off again. No, you don't get to say anything, I say, pointing a finger at him. You're the last person I want to hear from right now. I trusted her, and you're just a piece of trash who thought he could get away with it. Sarah finally raises her head, and there are tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispers. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just happened. I can't believe what I'm hearing. It just happened. I repeat, my voice dripping with disbelief. You don't just happen to have an affair. You don't just happen to sneak around behind my back. You made a choice, Sarah. You chose to lie to me, to betray me, and now you're going to stand there and act like it was some kind of accident? She starts sobbing, and I can see Andrew inching toward the door, like he's trying to figure out how to escape. I move to block his path. You're not going anywhere, I say, my voice low and steady. Not until I get some answers. I turn back to Sarah, who's wiping her tears with the back of her hand. How long? I ask again, and this time, my voice is barely more than a whisper. How long have you been seeing him? She hesitates, and I can see the words forming on her lips, but she's too scared to say them. A few months, she finally admits, and it feels like the ground has been ripped out from under me. A few months, I repeat, numb. All this time, and you never thought to tell me the truth. I was going to, I swear, she says, her voice cracking. I didn't know how. I shake my head, my mind spinning. You didn't know how. How about starting with, Daniel, I'm cheating on you? That seems pretty straightforward to me. Andrew finally speaks up, his voice shaky. Look, man, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I cut him off with a glare. No, you don't get to apologize. You don't get to pretend you're innocent in this. You knew she was married. You knew exactly what you were doing. I can see him struggling to find the right words, but nothing he says will make this better. I turn back to Sarah, and all I feel is a deep, overwhelming sadness. Was it worth it? I ask, my voice hollow. Was he worth destroying everything we had? She doesn't answer, and I can see the guilt in her eyes, but it's too late. I don't wait for her to say anything else. I turn and walk out of the room, leaving them both standing there, unsure of what to do. As I step outside, the cold night air hits me, and I finally let myself breathe. I can feel the anger starting to fade, replaced by an emptiness I've never felt before. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I do know one thing, my life will never be the same again. After that night, everything felt surreal, like I was watching my life from the outside. I didn't know whether to be angry, sad, or just numb. I had thought confronting them would give me some clarity, but all it did was open 1,000 more questions. The look on Sarah's face kept replaying in my head, those tears, the way she said she was sorry. But sorry wasn't going to cut it. I knew I needed to do more than just yell and storm out. If this was the end of my marriage, I was going to make sure it was on my terms. I wasn't going to let her walk away without facing the consequences of what she did. So, I did what anyone would do, I started digging. I needed solid evidence, not just what I saw through a foggy window. I needed something undeniable, something that would expose Sarah and this sleazebag of a dentist, Dr. Andrew, for exactly what they were. I went through Sarah's phone records, checked her calendar, even looked up the location history on her GPS. I didn't care if it made me look like a stalker. I was past the point of caring. What I found was a pattern, lots of late-night appointments, all conveniently scheduled when I was either at work or out of town. And there were texts, too, ones she thought she had deleted, but I managed to recover a few fragments. They were enough to confirm that this had been going on for months, but still not the smoking gun I needed. I wanted her to squirm, to have no way out. Then, I got an unexpected break. A few days later, I got a message on social media from a woman named Lisa. I didn't recognize her name at first, but then she introduced herself, Andrew's dental assistant. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't know what she wanted, but I felt like this could be the missing piece of the puzzle. Lisa's message was blunt and to the point. She had heard rumors about what happened at the clinic, how I had confronted Sarah and Andrew. Apparently, news traveled fast in their little dental world. But she wasn't reaching out to console me or play nice. No, Lisa had a bone to pick with Andrew. Turns out, she had been infatuated with him for years, quietly hoping he'd notice her. She'd always been the loyal assistant, bending over backward to make his life easier, but to him, she was just part of the background. Until Sarah came along. Andrew had been stringing Lisa along, giving her just enough attention to keep her hooked, but when Sarah started coming to his office, all of that changed. He became obsessed, and Lisa was tossed aside. When she tried to confront him about it, he brushed her off, said he was too busy for her little drama. That rejection had turned her love into pure, burning hatred. "I can't stand him," she wrote. "And I can't stand your wife either. They deserve everything that's coming to them." I didn't know what to expect from Lisa, but I could tell she wasn't messing around. She had been scorned, and now she wanted revenge. That's when she dropped the bombshell, "I have something that might interest you. I've been keeping tabs on them for a while. You know, just in case. And I think you're going to want to see it." She sent me a file. It took a moment to download, but when it did, I almost couldn't bring myself to open it. My hands were shaking as I clicked on the video, and for a few seconds, there was nothing but silence and darkness. Then the screen lit up, and there they were, Sarah and Andrew. It was in the clinic, after hours, and they clearly thought they were alone. Andrew was sitting on one of the dental chairs, and Sarah was straddling him, wearing nothing but a flimsy gown. The whole scene was surreal, like something out of a bad movie. My heart felt like it was going to explode out of my chest. I could hear their voices, laughing, whispering, saying things I wish I could unhear. But that wasn't the worst of it. The video went on, and it got worse, much worse. Andrew wasn't just fooling around, he was filming the whole thing, making comments, giving instructions, and Sarah was going along with it, smiling, giggling, acting like she was enjoying every minute. They were doing things I never even thought to try with her, things she never suggested when we were together. And then came the part that made me sick to my stomach. He had her in every possible way. There was no mistaking it. Andrew made sure to get it all on camera, like he was showing off a prized possession. And Sarah, she didn't look like someone who was being manipulated or pressured. She looked like she was right where she wanted to be. I didn't know what to do with myself. My legs felt weak, and I had to sit down, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. It was like a car crash, you don't want to look, but you can't help it. I felt humiliated, disgusted, but most of all, I felt rage. Rage that they had done this to me, that they had been so bold, so careless, so happy. Lisa's message popped up again. "I've got more, if you want it," she said, almost teasing. Videos, pictures, texts, he was pretty careless. "I can help you expose them, Daniel. I can help you make sure everyone sees them for what they really are." I had to take a moment to breathe, to think. It felt like my whole world was spinning out of control, and I needed to grab onto something solid. But one thing was clear, I was not going to let Sarah walk away from this without consequences. I didn't know if I was going to use the video, or if I could even stomach watching it again, but I needed to make a plan. Lisa was offering me everything I needed to destroy their reputations, to drag them through the mud, just like they had done to me. But I also knew that if I wasn't careful, I could end up destroying myself in the process. I sent Lisa a message back, "Send me everything you have." "Gladly," she replied, almost too quickly. "Let's make them pay." When I decided to go all in, I knew there was no turning back. The evidence Lisa had given me was damning. There was no way Andrew or Sarah could wriggle out of this one. After consulting with a lawyer, we decided to file charges against Andrew, citing not only infidelity but unethical conduct and abuse of power in the workplace. It turned out that what he did with Sarah wasn't just a betrayal, it was a violation of professional ethics, and he'd broken several laws by engaging in sexual activities with patients on company premises. It didn't take long for the case to gain traction. The legal team subpoenaed Andrew's records, and with the videos, pictures, and texts Lisa had collected, we had an ironclad case. I wanted to ensure that this wasn't just about divorce or infidelity. I wanted the world to see exactly what kind of person Andrew was. And if it meant Sarah got dragged down with him, so be it. The trial became the talk of the town. Andrew had always presented himself as this charming, respectable dentist, but now, everyone knew the truth. The courtroom was packed on the day the trial began, with people whispering, speculating, and glancing over at Sarah and Andrew as they walked in. I could see the tension in their faces, the way they tried to look composed, but the cracks were already showing. I took a seat next to Lisa, and she gave me a small, satisfied smile. "Ready?" she asked, almost gleefully. "Oh, I'm ready," I said. And I meant it. The prosecution didn't hold back. They started by introducing the evidence, texts that showed Andrew scheduling appointments for Sarah outside of normal hours, thinly veiled as dental checkups. Then came the video footage, the same ones that Lisa had shared with me. The defense tried to argue that they were irrelevant, but the judge allowed it, citing the obvious abuse of professional boundaries. The room was dead silent as the first video played. You could hear a pin drop. There they were, Andrew and Sarah, in his clinic after hours, doing things that had absolutely nothing to do with dentistry. The screen showed everything, every kiss, every touch, every whispered promise. I saw Sarah's face flush with shame, her eyes darting around, trying to find somewhere, anywhere, to hide. But there was nowhere to go. She had to sit there, just a few feet away from her family, her friends, and even a few of our mutual acquaintances, all watching as her betrayal played out on the screen. Andrew tried to keep his composure, but you could see his hands trembling as he adjusted his tie. Lisa leaned over and whispered, "Look at their faces. They thought they were so clever, hiding this from everyone." I didn't respond, but I felt a cold satisfaction settling over me. This was their reality now. They couldn't hide, they couldn't run. They had to face the truth of what they'd done, and it was all right there for everyone to see. The trial lasted for several days, with witness testimonies, expert opinions, and more damning evidence. But the turning point came when the state licensing board representative took the stand. They made it clear that Andrew's behavior violated multiple ethical codes, not just because of the affair, but because he used his position of power to manipulate a patient into a sexual relationship. Andrew tried to defend himself, saying it was consensual, but the board wasn't having it. They made their decision swiftly. Andrew would be stripped of his medical license, effective immediately. The judge's gavel came down, and just like that, Dr. Perfect was no longer a doctor. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, but I kept my eyes on Andrew. I could see the moment it hit him, his whole career, everything he'd built, gone in an instant. He tried to keep a stoic face, but his eyes were glassy, like he was on the verge of breaking down. Lisa nudged me and smirked. "There it is. That's the face I was waiting for." If I thought seeing Andrew crumble would be satisfying, watching Sarah squirm was on a whole different level. During the trial, she had tried to keep her head down, as if she could pretend none of this was happening. But when the videos played, there was no avoiding it. Every gasp, every murmur from the audience felt like a slap to her face. I could see her cheeks burning, her hands trembling in her lap as she stared down, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. But then I remembered all those nights she lied to my face, all the times she sneaked off to see him, thinking she could get away with it. The prosecutor turned to her at one point and said, "Mrs. Thompson, care to explain why you thought it was appropriate to have these appointments with your dentist outside of normal business hours?" Sarah stuttered, trying to find the words, but there was nothing she could say. She looked over at me, her eyes pleading, as if she thought I could somehow make this stop. But I just stared back, unflinching. She was on her own. The judge summed it up perfectly during the verdict: this case has shown a clear and disturbing pattern of misconduct. This was not a one-time mistake, but a deliberate act that betrayed not only professional ethics but also personal trust. As the court adjourned, I felt this wave of relief wash over me. It was like I could finally breathe after months of suffocating under the weight of their lies. I looked over at Lisa, and she was grinning, ear to ear. "We did it," she said. "We actually did it." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of emotions, joy, relief, but also a kind of emptiness. I had won, but it didn't feel like a win. I had lost so much in the process: my marriage, my trust, the future I thought I was going to have. But at least I had taken control of how it ended. I caught sight of Sarah as she tried to leave the courtroom, her head down, her hands shaking. People were whispering, some of them pointing, others just staring in disbelief. She tried to walk quickly, but it was like she couldn't escape the eyes on her. I turned to Lisa one last time. "So, what now?" I asked. She shrugged. "Now we move on. But at least they're not walking away from this without consequences. It's been a few weeks since the trial ended, and I still don't know where to go from here." I filed for divorce, of course, and Sarah didn't even try to contest it. I think she just wanted to disappear, to get away from the mess she'd created. Andrew, from what I hear, is packing up and leaving town. He has no practice, no career, and no reputation left. I don't know if I feel triumphant, but I do feel free. I'm not weighed down by the lies anymore. I'm not waking up every day wondering what else is being hidden from me. It's a strange feeling, and it's going to take time to get used to it. But if there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that you can't ignore your instincts. And if someone betrays your trust, they should be ready to face the consequences. No matter how painful it is, sometimes you have to burn everything down to rebuild. And as for Lisa, well, we've kept in touch. Maybe it's just a friendship born out of shared anger, or maybe it's something more. But for now, it feels good to have someone who understands, someone who was willing to stand by my side and see this through to the bitter end. I don't know what the future holds, but at least I know who I can trust. And that's more than I had before. After the trial, things didn't just end for Sarah and Andrew, they unraveled. Andrew might have been stripped of his license, but he wasn't going down quietly. Word got out that he blamed everything on Sarah, calling her a distraction and insisting that their affair had been the reason his career was ruined. He painted himself as a victim, claiming she was the one who kept pursuing him, who led him astray. It was a weak defense, but for someone desperate to save face, I guess it made sense. I heard through the grapevine that they had one last, ugly fight where Andrew outright accused her, "It's your fault I lost everything. If you hadn't pushed for this, if you hadn't made things so complicated, I'd still have my career." From what I gathered, she didn't have much to say in response. Maybe she was too shocked that he turned on her so quickly, or maybe she knew deep down that this was inevitable. The last time I saw Andrew, he was slinking out of town with his tail between his legs. No one wanted anything to do with him, and I can't say I felt bad about it. He brought this on himself. But Sarah, well, she was left to pick up the pieces of a life that had fallen apart, and it was like watching a slow-motion train wreck. She ended up moving out of our house, which was something of a relief. It felt like closing a chapter, like I could finally start moving on without the constant reminder of what had happened. From what I heard, she's been staying in a tiny apartment on the other side of town, barely scraping by. Andrew was gone, and none of the friends she'd once charmed wanted to be associated with her after everything came out. She went from the life of the party to a social pariah almost overnight. When she tried to date again, it wasn't anything like what she had with Andrew. From what I could see, she ended up with a string of guys who were, let's just say, less than impressive. A couple of them were notorious deadbeats, guys who couldn't hold down a job or even bother to take care of themselves. I remember hearing about one who moved in with her and basically freeloaded until she finally got sick of it and kicked him out. It was a far cry from the smooth, successful dentist she'd thought she was getting with Andrew. I'll admit, there was a part of me that enjoyed seeing her struggle. Maybe that's petty, but after everything she put me through, I felt like she deserved a taste of her own medicine. She'd been so eager to sneak around, to lie and cheat for something she thought was better, and now she was stuck with losers who didn't care about her, not even a little. While Sarah was busy navigating the mess she'd made, I was finally starting to rebuild. I had filed for divorce, and with the trial behind me, I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. There was still a lot to sort out, but I was slowly learning to breathe again, to think about a future that didn't involve lies and betrayal. One person who made that process a whole lot easier was Lisa. We'd kept in touch after the trial, partly because we had this shared satisfaction of seeing Andrew and Sarah get what they deserved, but it turned out we actually got along really well. We started meeting up for coffee, then dinner, then weekend outings. What began as a friendship built on mutual resentment turned into something more. Lisa had been through her own hell with Andrew, and she knew exactly what it felt like to be played, to be made a fool of. But she was strong, and she didn't let it break her. She could laugh about it, make jokes, and find ways to look forward instead of backward. That was something I desperately needed. One night, after we'd gone out for dinner, she looked at me and said, "You know, I don't think I've ever seen you smile this much." I hadn't really thought about it, but she was right. "I guess I haven't had much to smile about lately," I said. She smiled back, that playful glint in her eyes. "Well, you should get used to it. You deserve to be happy, Daniel. And not just because you got the last laugh." We started seeing more of each other, and it wasn't long before I realized that what I felt for Lisa was more than just a rebound. She was kind, smart, and she had a way of making me feel seen, like I wasn't just the guy who'd been cheated on. She was someone who'd stood by me when everything fell apart, and now, she was helping me build something new. One weekend, we decided to take a little trip out of town, just to get away from everything. It was nothing fancy, just a couple of days in a small lakeside cabin, with no distractions, no reminders of the past. We spent our days hiking, talking, and just enjoying the peace that came with being somewhere new. On the last night, we sat by the water, watching the stars, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. She looked at me, her face soft and warm in the moonlight, and said, "So, what happens now?" I thought about it for a moment, then took her hand. "I think, we just keep moving forward," I said. "Together." And that was it. No drama, no hidden agendas, just two people deciding to see where things could go. It was simple, and that's what made it perfect. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that whatever came next, I wasn't going to let the past drag me down. I was done with lies, with manipulation, and with people who didn't care about anyone but themselves. As for Sarah, well, I don't keep tabs on her anymore. From what I've heard, she's still trying to figure things out, still looking for someone to fill the void Andrew left behind. Maybe she'll find it, or maybe she'll keep chasing after the next thing that makes her feel special. But that's not my problem anymore. I've got my own life to live, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like it's mine again. And the best part? I don't have to go through it alone. Bye-bye.